right, this is a major emergency alert, your World War III update. If you've not already heard, unfortunately, the inevitable has happened. It's hit the fan. 3 American troops lost their lives, as well as 34 wounded, 8 in critical condition, after a major attack, one of the biggest in some period of time, on an American military base that borders Jordan and Syria. This is a very well-defended base with multi-layered air defense, and that data point will become more significant as I expound on the details of exactly what happened there. But just know that this came in the run-up to a war between Hezbollah and Israel, okay? So somebody is sending a message by this. I think it's the IRGC just saying, hey, we can hit your bases, we can hit your air bases, we can hit your most well-fortified positions if we want to. So think twice about starting a war with Hezbollah. Now, the Iranian forces are on the highest state of alert. They are on maximum combat readiness. They are anticipating a major retaliatory strike from the U.S. Air Force. Now, right now, as you can see behind me on this map, this flight radar map, the U.S. Air Force has 9 Stratotankers in the air at the time of making this video. 6 are en route from California, heading to England, and there's another 3 up in the air between the Middle East and Europe. And it's expected that these are all going to be heading to the Middle East. Right now, the skies over Syria and Iraq, as you can expect, and Jordan are all empty because they're anticipating a major counterattack. And we can presume, if they're having this many refueling Stratotankers, that they're planning on going deep, possibly all the way to Iran. Now, Biden's administration has been cautioned against this by numerous advisors for fear of nuclear reprisal. However, it is very likely that they're going to strike these militia groups throughout the region. And that in itself is going to just cause a continued chain reaction of escalation throughout the region. Now, I just want to show you something. This is actually going to be a quick video today, but I want to show you this interview that I conducted with Joel Skousen. I'm just going to play you a 1-minute clip, okay? And this was an interview that I had demonetized. And that doesn't happen too often, believe it or not. This is the only video in the last 6 months that I've had demonetized. For some reason, they couldn't provide me a valid explanation as far as I'm concerned. But I'm telling you, he predicted exactly what happened today, okay? And this is a guy, he's the author of the book Strategic Relocation, a very popular prepping book, but he's also a geopolitical analyst. I don't agree with everything he says. Let's get that 100% clear. But I will say that he did predict the Ukraine war to a T, and that's what compelled me to have him on the channel in the first place. That back in 2012, he predicted that after 2020, the Russians and the Ukrainians were going to go to war. NATO was going to be involved. Now, nobody could foresee the pandemic, so you have to tack on a couple extra years. But let's hear what he has to say about this current situation. This interview was done just after October 7th, okay?
Syrian military. You see, Iran does have a defensive motive. They know that they're in the crosshairs of the globalists and that Israel is the one that's going to start the war. Now, Israel has been trying to provoke an Iran-Israeli war for over 3 years now by attacking Iranian militia bases in Syria, almost weekly. You have Israeli attacking them, and Iran has done nothing. They haven't taken the bait because they haven't been ready yet, but I think they're now getting ready. They've been, in the meantime, building up the military.
And also consider that back during the Soleimani assassination time, there wasn't 3 war theaters ensuing and intensifying. Of course, we're talking about Ukraine, Russia, Korean Peninsula, and China and Taiwan. So now that the U.S. is preoccupied in all these other places, it's time for Iran to make their move.
Aspects of Hezbollah and Hamas and in Yemen. And so there's a lot of firepower there that if they unleash that against Israel and the United States, there's going to be a lot of damage. Now, the reason why the U.S. has kept troops in Syria and Iraq, and there's many military people that want to pull those troops out. What are we keeping them in there for? I mean, Iraq is not fighting us anymore. Syria is not fighting us anymore. They're being kept there as bait. They're being kept there to be bloodied by Iran when this war starts, which will justify the U.S. entering the war. They've hit our troops, so we're going to go in after Iran, and that's why they're still there. So all of the pieces together, Nate, are for a major military third world war.
I tell you, he hit the nail on the head there, and I would encourage you to go and check out that interview because he says a lot of other things that are going to happen next. So all I can say is that our time to prepare is limited, so you better seize upon it while you can. Now, I'm going to try to make sense of this nebulous state of affairs that's going on in the Middle East. I'll provide you the details in just a moment. Before I do that, I want to play this video because this is the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, talking about what the plan is for Israel, okay? He's pointing to a map of Israel and he's saying where all the main targets are going to be. Now, I think this is an older video, but it was making the rounds today, and I think right now it's more significant than ever because, of course, it involves the nuclear question. So let's just see what this has to say, and it's a bad translation, so let's just play it here and see what happens. The roadmap. This is an occupied map of occupied Palestine. He's pointing to a map of Israel, okay? What are the points and goals, he says? All the national centers. So he's listing off all the targets, the things that Hezbollah is going to target inside Israel when the war starts. Government, Ministry of War, Army Base, the Knesset, the Ben Gurion Airport, private airfields, military airfields, bases for unconventional military production. So he's talking, of course, about chemical production factories, nuclear production factories, nuclear weapons facilities, centers for military production, as well as critical infrastructure, electrical stations, gas stations, water purification stations, oil refineries, and things like that. And so this is what they're going to do. When the war with Israel starts, this is where Hezbollah is going to target. So right now, this is a very convenient excuse for the Americans to get closer to this conflict to minimize the IRGC-backed militias throughout that region coming to Hezbollah's aid when this war begins. Now, in terms of exactly what has happened here today and why this is so significant, for starters, just know that we're going to war. Now, this is it. This is the inflection point. Okay, this is what everybody anticipated was going to happen, including Joel Skousen, of course, that eventually American troops were going to be killed, and that was going to be plastered across the main front page of the Western media, and that is exactly what we're seeing tonight. Now, concurrently, we have unverified reports that Russian and Syrian forces are withdrawing from Sharat Air Base in western Syria, okay? This is an air base that is used by the Iranian Air Force for resupplying militias in Syria and Lebanon. We have Lloyd Austin and officials discussing response options with Biden. However, they are saying that the reaction to this is going to be swift and it is going to be pretty major. We also have Iranian-backed militia sites in eastern Syria and Iraq reportedly being evacuated. And the Iraqi resistance group who took credit for this is saying that they're going to increase their attacks on U.S. forces in spite of whatever the U.S. does, all right? So that is not good. Now, in terms of why Biden might not attack Iran, an ex-UN weapons inspector, David Albright, has warned that a kamikaze drone attack that killed the 3 soldiers would prompt Iran to accelerate its nuclear weapons program if the United States attacked Iran directly. Now, really, where would they attack inside Iran? Where would it even make sense? I don't know. Like I said, it's a nebulous state of affairs there, and nobody really knows unless you're really there on the ground and you know the various factions that are fighting and where they're located. I think that their retaliatory strikes are going to be limited to the proxy groups, but I guess time will tell. Now, Albright has claimed that Iran could build 12 nuclear weapons in 5 months, and he advises the U.S. to send a clear message by targeting the responsible militants, but cautions against launching direct strikes on Iran to avoid a wider conflict. And of course, compel Iran even more to go to the extent of actually building a nuclear weapon. Why wouldn't Iran want a nuclear weapon at this point in time? He highlights Iran's potential to produce enough weapons-grade uranium for a nuclear weapon in 1 week, 6 weapons in a month, and 12 in 5 months. Just remember, Israel's a small place. You don't need many nukes. Israeli media reports the arrival of 3 USAF B-52 long-range strategic bombers at Ben Gurion Airport, and as previously indicated, we have all kinds of Stratotankers in the air, signifying that they're planning on going deep, okay, and that they're going to need those refueling planes. So that is the current situation as we speak. Of course, we know that there are thousands of U.S. troops scattered throughout the Middle East. If they do attack Iran, we should expect, in spite of how rigged the markets are, for the price of oil to skyrocket, because of course the Iranians can close the Strait of Hormuz or just make it a situation where it's not feasible to be moving ships through here because the insurance premiums will be too high. Even if, you get the Houthis firing missiles in this direction, then all hell will break loose. Now, the only saving grace at this point in time might be China intervening, because this is where they get a lot of their oil from. But this might be an American play to try to collapse China at the same time. Then if they collapse China, expect Walmart and Costco to be empty, because that's where all our stuff comes from, okay? Now, this is what the Hawks are saying. Lindsey Graham, hit Iran now, hit them hard. Of course, that guy has the foresight of a flea, so I wouldn't expect anything less from him. What else do we got to talk about here? Like I said, this is going to be a quick video. I just wanted to quickly touch on this issue and remind people that time is of the essence. If you have any major preparedness projects, you got to get them started right now, okay? Now, this is an interesting story. Germans are being expected to build their own bomb shelters, all right? This is according to the agency Bild, which seems to be breaking a lot of stories lately as it pertains to German civil defense. The country's National Draft Emergency Defense Plan reportedly assigns construction roles for civilians. Germans will be expected to turn their homes into bomb shelters if a major war breaks out in Europe. According to the report, the ministry is set to complete work on the classified, not so classified, I guess, if we all know about it, operational plan, or O-plan, by April. This draft envisions Germany as a transit country crucial for the delivery of weapons and equipment rather than a state with an active front line. Well, why would you need bunkers then? For that reason, soldiers would be tasked with securing key highways, railway stations, and ports. Okay, they're always going to tell you that the war is never coming until it's here. The same thing they said in Ukraine. Don't worry, the Russians ain't going to attack. And then they get you locked in there, and then before you know it, you're being hauled off in a van to the front lines. At the same time, the government would have to rely on civilians to step in and cover some duties, typically assigned to the military and police, including the protection of power plants. So there's already this talk about recruiting these civilian militias for logistics. We're hearing that a lot coming out of the UK, but Europe is definitely mobilizing for war, and they're trying to inject it into the public mind state slowly and subtly, so not to spook anyone, and they're priming the population gradually. There are only 579 functional bomb shelters in Germany, so the plan reportedly sees citizens setting up their own shelters in places such as basements and garages, which of course is a sensible thing to do, from a prepping standpoint. If you can afford it, great. If you can retrofit your basement to be a nuclear fallout shelter, I think at this point in time, if you're in Europe, that's something you should consider. Bill quoted the head of the Federal Office of Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance as saying that building new shelters is no longer feasible due to time constraints. What? no longer feasible due to time constraints. So are they anticipating that they are not going to have enough time to build bunkers for the civilian population, and that war is coming that soon that they're not going to have an opportunity to do that? Anyways, guys, I would encourage you to go and check out that story, get a little bit more information on it. But, you know, as Joel Skousen said, I think that, and he says in that interview what the plan is next, okay? And it involves a much broader world war. And I would encourage you to go check out that interview. I'll post a link in the description. It is Sunday. It was supposed to be my day off, but of course, the shit hit the fan. The best way to support this channel is to gear up at CanadianPreparedness.com. I get asked by all kinds of sponsors, can we put ads on your stuff? Can we, you know, we say this in a video. I only support and promote stuff that I myself use. That's why I have a store, a warehouse where we ship direct to you. It's not next day like Amazon, but quite frankly, Amazon prices, if you haven't noticed lately, they've been going up a lot. And a lot of the variety that we have, you can't even find it on Amazon. So go and check it out. I anticipate that once the war starts in the Middle East, it's going to be very hard to get stuff because the price of oil is going to spike. Very likely we could see a increase in tensions between China and the United States, which of course would basically drive a wedge for international trade. So a lot of that stuff that you can get in stores at a relatively cheap price point now might not be available at all. So definitely go and check that out. And I'll leave you with this quote from Dmitry Medvedev back in December 26th of 2022 when he says, and he was saying this jokingly, in jest, but you know, now looking back at it in hindsight, maybe it wasn't so much of a joke. Civil war will break out in the US, California, and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. I don't know about that part. I can't see that. I think maybe this is where he kind of went off the rails. Elon Musk will win the presidential election. I don't think Elon is qualified to be president. He could probably be governor in a number of states, which after the new civil wars end, will have been given to the GOP. Interesting. I wonder how much he was drinking that day. Anyways, guys, gear up while the getting is good. I'll keep you posted, and we'll be back to our regular scheduled, I don't want to call it programming, because there's a reason why they call it programming, our regular scheduled viewing tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.